If you succeeded to make a movie that you wanted to make in the way that you intended it to be, and not in the way that people want it, are you considered a successful director or not? Kiyoshi Kurosawa is one of those filmmakers who usually creates his films in a very personal way. If you look at his films from Cure to Pulse to Sweet Home to The Guard from Underground to literally 90% of his movies, you see and mostly feel this personal style of filmmaking that is mostly the opposite of a path that a blockbuster movie goes through. They feel less like a story and more like an environment provided to you so you can crack the codes to understand the story. If I wanted to say it more easily, we don't get much exposition in them. The scenes are slow-paced and very, very, very long. And one of my favorite things that he does in his movies is that he blends the border between subjective and objective scenes. Sometimes it becomes so hard to tell if what you're watching is actually happening or it is just symbolism or a state of dream. I actually talked about this subject in my previous video. I highly recommend you to go and watch it. Just a quick reminder that when you don't subscribe and hit the notification bell, the chances of finding my videos again decreases. I recently watched Cure and I was fascinated by the fact that how little we get any information, yet the film is made in a way that you make theories and conclusions that you are sure the director thought of that possible theory. Because the more you find new theories on different places of the internet, the more you see that all of them lead to one or two or eventually three possible conclusions. But we're not here for the theories. We're here to see what technical elements made a completely personal movie that had low chances of getting recognized to an underrated masterclass of filmmaking that is slowly building more fans and audiences. Take a look at this scene. Now look at this one. The first scene is made from a completely subjective shot, so when this scene is shown, we hear the void of sound, so it can put us in the shoes of Dr. Sakuma. However, the second scene stands more on the objective side of the spectrum. The sound of ocean waves is the loudest thing in this scene, but even after the movie cuts to the next scene, which happens inside a house, we can still hear the sound of the outside. Usually in other movies, when you have such scenario, we don't hear any sound effects playing from outdoors. But in here, it happens, and it happens for a reason. If you think about it and focus on sounds in most of the films you watch, you realize that when two characters are talking, most of the surrounding sound is reduced or sometimes even completely faded out. But in this movie is the opposite. And we can see this happening in many other parts of the movie. For example, this scene reminds me of the scene from Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, which we see that when our protagonist is talking to someone on the phone, the camera slowly pans towards the hallway. Scorsese said about this scene in an interview that he meant that the protagonist is so lonely that even when you move the camera in a way that you want to show someone is coming, no one is still coming. This is his reason of that camera move. But my interpretation at first while watching that scene was that the world is still going with or without our character's story. Just like this scene. Yes, this scene can have other meanings. For instance, I think this is a foreshadowing to how the police officer or some other victims that we might even never know them got and will get hypnotized by these flashing lights. We can clearly see at the end of the movie that even after Mamiya is dead, the hypnotism is still going, because there is a bigger world outside of our character's world. This film is in the category of horror, and one of those horror movies that is mostly just creepy, and not in a jump-scare-ish kind of way. And not gonna lie, this movie is creepy. And there are many reasons for it, so we're going to talk about some of them. In the real world, and especially in the movies, whether the killer is killing for good or bad, they usually have a reaction or a different face while doing the killing. But in here, it looks like an ordinary job. Nothing is changed for them. It's like they just did a job that they had to do. This, in my opinion, is the most chilling murder scene in the whole movie. This scene runs for a whole 1 minute and 12 seconds. It happens in a day after this police officer found our mysterious guy last night. We're not sure, but till this point of the movie, we suspect that the mysterious guy uses hypnosis to make others kill others. So while watching this no-cut scene, we suspect that the police officer that spent the night with Mamiya is hypnotized. The scene keeps going and we still don't see Mamiya. We start to suspect that something might be off. And why is this scene taking so long? If you go on Reddit and try to find answers for vague elements of the film, and especially the ending, you usually see one thing that any person that watched the movie agree with. And that is that after you finish the movie, it stays with you for days or even months. But why? As you probably know, the film is about hypnotism. And I previously mentioned that despite the things happening on the screen, the world is still moving forward off the screen. If you pay attention, you see that not only the film gives us hints that our main protagonist might have been hypnotized, but he was hypnotized way before he and us knew. God knows, and also probably Mamiya knows, what triggered the start of his hypnotism. And God and probably the director knows when and by what elements of the film we got hypnotized. Yes, you've been hypnotized too. That is why the movie won't leave your head. And one small or big thing triggered your brain. At first, we are observers. Then we get more involved. And at the end, we are also being observed.